this was something I noticed in this fight as well as the Loma fight. And obviously we do a lot of stuff at our gym with footwork and like cage control and understanding the space that you're in and how to like take it off your opponent and manipulate their movement. A lot of these fighters that I'm watching at the moment they've got good they've got good footwork reactive to their opponent, but not to the space that they're in. Does that make sense?
And so not like, proactive footwork. Like I'm not putting my footwork on you and steering you into where I want you.
Exactly. It's like they know how to like step to the outside of the foot to like expose that angle and make their opponent uncomfortable, or you know what I mean, like square them up for particular techniques or whatever. But I don't know.
In relation to their environment, it's not great.
Yeah, like
how many times
Peter Yan, for example, Peter Yan is a good example of someone that uses the fence very well to kind of shepherd them into a corner where he can then start working them in a pressured situation. But then if you watch Loma's got really good footwork, but only in relation to her opponent.
Yeah.
Like if her opponent moves forward, she can quite happily circle herself onto the fence, completely ignoring the fact that the fence is there.
Yeah.
It's almost like the space, the shape of the arena is irrelevant. Mm-hmm. It's like it's an open space, and she just kind of maneuvers around her opponent where she needs to. Maybe she's so comfortable in the clinch, but like I don't want to jump between fights, but Godinez, when she shot on her in the second round, and she got her backed up against the fence, like she'd stepped in, landed a couple of shots, and Loma committed to an up elbow, and she just level changed and shot her into the fence. Really clean takedowns. She would have been far easier to defend those if she wasn't trapped up against the fence. But she often circled herself onto the fence because she's only reacted to her opponent. Yeah,
it was almost irrelevant to her where the fence was.
But then,
when used, and conversely, when used right, it's like a weapon, right? You know, you're manipulating the environment by moving people into spaces that you want them moved into.
Yeah, it's like you're appealing to their subconscious to go in the direction that's safest.
Yeah.
And I was like, I've been kind of reverse engineering this a little bit recently because, like, when I was doing the cage session on Thursday last week, Riley said, "Did you do this kind of stuff when you were fighting, or is this stuff that you've been like working on and understanding since?" And I understand it a lot better since, but I did also understand controlling somebody up against the fence or drawing them to me to counter, because that they were two sides of my striking game that I was pretty familiar with, but. I think that's because when I started martial arts, it was because it was for reality situations. And in those circumstances, you've got to watch, there's a wall here, there's the phone box, I've got to watch that table behind me to my left. Like you've got to be aware of your surroundings and also aware of multiple opponents. So it gives you this kind of spatial awareness that I think when you then go, oh, now we're in a ring and now we're in a cage.
And how much time are you training in the ring and in the cage? Really?
Yeah, not a lot.
Most people are training on mats, right? Padded walls and maybe a cage wall.
Yeah.
But they're not training they're not training where they're going to compete.
No.
Well, I was thinking about, my head went off while you were saying that, in that I find a lot, and I'm sure you'll find the same, sort of older generation coaches do stuff, and it's not until like now we reflect back on doing that. They're doing it, and it's the right thing to do. They're not necessarily doing it for the right reason, but now we've come to understand why that is a good thing to do.
Yeah.
But they're not necessarily coaching it with that in mind, but they just know that it works for the sport. And now, because we have more access to information or whatever, we're like, oh, you do that because of this. And they'll be like, well, I don't give a fuck. Whatever. We'll do this because it works. And then you work out why. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I'm sure there's some Thai boxing stuff that you'd have talked about back in the day where you're like, oh, I never mentioned that's why we did it. But now I understand why we did it.
Yeah.
Because it's for whatever reason, you know.
For sure. That's why I like looking through those old books.
Yeah.
Like even if they're in a language I can't understand, I like looking through and looking at the diagrams and trying to try and understand what's going on. But like especially with a lot of the old styles of kung fu, there was stuff that they used to do with the footwork and with their lower body attacks that was really, really smart stuff. But then, like, they would have these, like, patterns that they would drill, like Singi or Bagua. They would move in octagonal footwork patterns. And it was all about twisting and remaining balanced as you were doing stuff. You were blocking and attacking. Just good drills. But, like, that then taken out and modernized and applied to MMA, for sure, is valuable. Like, those patterns are good to be rehearsed. That's why I do a lot of footwork.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of the kung fu and a lot of the traditional martial arts was about postures, right? And we know how important postures are. Like, obviously, the traditional martial arts got a little bit lost in terms of efficacy and how actually usable it was, but some of the principles were right.
Yeah, but they were also starting with nothing as well.
Yeah.
Like if you're a monk in a monastery on a hillside, like what reference have you got for fighting? It's not like you can jump on YouTube and watch,
a million
50
fights.
years worth of high level professional martial arts or boxing. Like they were literally watching animals and trying to figure out. So they were like trying to understand how their body works in comparison to other animals that know how to fight with one another.
Yeah, true.
It's weird. It's weird. It's like a technology.